We thought we should come back for an emergency broadcast.
It does feel somewhat of an emergency, doesn't it?
Hi, I'm Andy,
And I'm Roger,
and welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics.
on our search to find the middle.
We're going to give you last week's news today.
It's a slogan we should put on a t-shirt.
Stop touching her!
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Taylor Swift.
Look, my biggest issue with marriage is that I think that it's a fundamentally flawed institution that is built on the oppression of women.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Having truly rational conversations about controversial issues is risky these days.
Andy.
G'day, Roger. How you going?
Been better.
I guess we should say at the outset, this is not the episode we were going to release this week. In fact, we recorded an episode last night, but we thought we would reconvene given the news that happened after we recorded. So you'll get that episode that we recorded last night next week, and it does touch on some Trump-adjacent themes, but given the blow-up between Trump and Zelensky after we recorded it, we thought we should come back for an emergency broadcast.
It does feel somewhat of an emergency, doesn't it? if you're totally honest with yourself. It was such a surreal experience, actually, because we had obviously spoken about, Zelensky and Trump and the Ukraine in the previous episode, and to wake up first thing in the morning in Sydney time and see all these clips of the horrendous meeting between Zelensky, Trump, and Vance at the White House. It was quite shocking, and it was just one of those moments to think, oh well, the world has kind of changed. When you see these kind of headlines and you actually witness the exchanges, the brutal exchanges of what it's quite shocking. I think you're not used to seeing that level of discussion when the stakes are this high amongst the highest of office.
I mean, that's how okay, so for anyone was living under a rock or is yet to see it, I mean, this is the press conference between Zelensky and Putin in the White House, and where they're talking about they're about to go in to discuss their negotiations for, the various deals that they're going to make relating to peace in the Ukraine. And, just leading up to those conversations. And, it's sort of been a little bit of the context of this is you've had Trump say things like, that Ukraine started the conflict. You've also had him calling Zelensky a dictator or something like that. You have Trump cozying up to Putin, and there's all sorts of questions about, what's the score with that? Like, is there like a P video or something that's yet to be released? Like, there's just this, like, what does Putin have over Trump? And so, there's like some things said, and, it just kind of escalates. And at no point is there any de-escalation. It's the kind of conversation you would expect, like a robust conversation, to happen behind closed doors. And you could imagine that kind of a conversation happening on like a high stakes matter behind closed doors, but not open in such an obvious way. So, right. Give me your, what's your take on it? Like, how did it leave you feeling? Like, where's your? I mean, yeah, okay, you've said the overtures around, how, there's like all the obvious things to say, but like, give me the deep cut sort of, how does it make you feel, sort of, what's your takeout?
It's hard not to, it's hard not to come away from witnessing the actual clips of, a fairly heated and personal disagreement where you know the meeting's not going well. when it's starting to become personal, there's a difference between being assertive and being aggressive or berating, and the very nature of it, I think it was just mismatch, right? I think that we've often talked about it. How do you deal with Trump? You play the man, not the cards. And I think that in this particular case, that Zelensky wasn't able or wasn't prepared to do that, right? And some of that could have been manufactured, but it left you with a feeling of, gee, that things are getting bad now, and there's going to be a lot of consequences for this. But I want to talk about the angles, right? Because I think with all the stuff that Trump does, there's a certain amount of theater, and the magic of it is that you don't know. You actually have yourself second guessing what was a conscious, planned, premeditated decision versus what was just person-to-person cock-up, right? And like calamity and chaos. And I think that there's a few different things going on here that actually, while I'm not trying to get you across the line that Trump's playing 4D chess, I do think that there are some ways this could have gone in, right? Like some rational ways that you can provide some angles in. And I want to talk about just like two ends of the scale, right? Well, maybe not even scale, but just two things that are popping into my mind, right? The first one is that when I watched it, and especially having Vance be the one that was the attack dog, right? And it was almost like on cue. That part did feel a little bit forced or manufactured. I feel that potentially Vance could have been given the signal to attack in an effort to try to tank the deal or to turn the narrative of the American people or the MAGA base or whatever it may be against Zelensky enough to walk away from the Ukraine, right? And so that would indicate this motive of Trump never really wanting a deal, seeing it more as like a costly distraction and wanting to kind of almost have a bit of a faux theater of, look, we tried. We're the ones that wanted peace. He wouldn't work with us. And look at him, intransigent, and didn't even say thank you for all the propping up, the support that we've given him. It's time to cut our losses, and if they're not willing for peace, then we're out. So that's like one line that you could kind of almost say, hey, look, some of this was a bit of theater to allow that narrative, to those decisions to kind of go down a bit more smoothly with the American people and so on. And then the second is maybe, okay, this is actually the art of the deal. And in that, Trump and his team are trying to leverage the disadvantage of one party so much that they're forced to make a deal, effectively bullying and shoring up and trying to kind of play around with the incentives to say, hey, look, we need to actually make Ukraine feel as vulnerable as possible in this moment so that they actually will come to the table, right? In a perverse kind of game theory way of leveraging or leaning on a particular party in a negotiation. And this is actually to get a deal in America's interests, right? So, and look, I don't know how you feel about either of those two, but the reality is they both could be possible. They both could be possible of what's trying to occur right now.
Yeah, so this is like another one of these, like, let's try and find some kind of grand strategy in, like, Trump. Like, let's give him the benefit of the doubt and take something that seems superficially as like a really bad decision, a really bad way of going about it, and just almost in disbelief that we're in this situation. Let's try and figure out like what could be like the really brilliant genius like reason that he's doing this, and let's like give him the benefit of the doubt that it's actually his inner brilliance and inner genius that's doing this. Like, and I think that's like, this is like the Occam's razor thing. Like, it probably isn't that, right?
Yeah.
And I think I see it a little bit more simply. Like, I actually surprisingly don't kind of like, I think there's been a lot of outrage at the exchange, right? From earlier, the media and commentators and so on. Like, and, all the world leaders have come together and supported Zelensky and so on, and Ukraine. I don't see the exchange itself as like, like we've been shocked by Trump for the last like 8 years. Like, is this really, this is just like another chapter, another shocking event. Like, is this any more shocking than, him not transferring peacefully power over to Biden in 2020? Like, is this worse than that? No, probably not. Is this, like, this is just another like shocking incident in his administration. So what is it then? Like, well, what's the takeaway? And I think the takeaway is that, like, it just does reveal, where their heads are at, like what the mindset is, right? So I actually went back and listened to the whole thing. And the whole thing sort of starts off like Trump does give his whole like, kind of fluff piece. And, it's okay though. It's like, it's just within the range of how a Trump kind of press conference would go, right? And it's all fine. Like in fact, 75% of, this is a 45-minute like press conference, by the way. So, or something like that, right? So it's pretty, it's not like the 5-minute mishmash like cut that you see on the news, or the last 5 minutes, which is where it all heated up. But you can see this like train wreck kind of slowly emerging, because what's happening is like Zelensky is actually pushing for like the case that, no, hang on, let's just rewind this a bit. This isn't about two sides and, America brokering some kind of peace between two, warring sides, or, this is some conflict that needs, some dispute requiring, neutral mediation, right? Which the president is stepping up to do, right? Zelensky's pushing the line that, no, we're actually strategic allies. We're partners, actually. You're on our side. You're meant to be on our team. Like, let's like, this is not, forget the fact that like, okay, you've contributed, we're very grateful that you've contributed billions of dollars of defense support and all of that sort of stuff. But like, from Zelensky's point of view, he's actually trying to push into the press conference the notion of, well, actually, no, you can't draw a moral equivalence between the Ukraine side and Putin and that side. Like you can't, that we got to always remember, this guy's the one that, challenged our sovereignty and invaded us and killed our people and destroyed lives and cities and all of that sort of stuff. So he's injecting that in. And you can just see sort of that, like, that's just not how Trump is seeing it. Like, Trump is just literally seeing it through the lens of, well, hang on, we don't owe you anything. And, like, let's not get carried away with, like, conversations about, how we're going to work together to help you do this thing. Like, this is literally, you've got to convince me to continue to support you. And so there's just this shift of, like, this dichotomy in the room where, and it sort of unravels, because I think what happens is they're both kind of irritating each other at the same time, but for different reasons. So I think Zelensky's irritating Trump because Trump's sort of like, hang on, like, that's very presumptuous of you to be talking about like security guarantees and all these sorts of things, and that your need for our weapons and a backstop for European support and all that. So that's very presumptuous. Like, why are you coming in and talking to me like this, like as though it's a foregone conclusion that we're going to support you? So, and Zelensky's kind of like, he is definitely saying things to unpack like some of Putin's, Trump's engagement with Putin over the last couple of weeks, right? So he's saying things like that's quite pointed to that, right? And then the other thing is, Trump is pissing Zelensky off because he's just not recognizing, he's just not recognizing the unjustness of it. So they're all getting kind of riled up, and then it all comes and explodes. So in some ways, I'm not 100% convinced of this line that it's all like theater and it was all orchestrated. I mean, I think it probably was one of those ones where like all scenarios were factored for, and they probably did have a conversation before said, oh, if he gets cheeky on us, let's hammer him. You can go for it, JD, kind of thing. Like, they probably did have that kind of a conversation, but it wasn't like, they had this like grand plan all along. I'm not sure if I believe that, but as far as your notion of grand strategy or some sort of, I think that I think that's just not how it is for Trump. Like, I think all Trump cares about is getting his box ticked that he's entered, like, that he can claim credit for ending the war. I don't think he gives two flying fucks about how that's achieved, the quality and the enduring nature of the peace that's negotiated. I don't think he cares whether he's handing Putin sort of, yeah, okay, I don't care. All I need is 5 years. Just give me 5 years, then you can go and take the rest of the country. I don't care, because I'll be gone by then, and it'll be the next guy's fault. And they might be a Democrat even as well, right? So whereas Zelensky is in that room fighting for the enduring peace, and that enduring peace will depend on continued and ongoing support from the US in terms of security. So that's the dynamic in the room, and that's why I don't think those claims of like Trump being some kind of like genius to, make one party like I just don't think that's like, well, okay, maybe if your goal is a very superficial peace, then you can say, well, okay, that's a way to get there, but that shouldn't be the goal.
I don't think we can know yet, to be totally honest with you. And the reason I think that I don't think that this is genius-like behavior. I don't think this this is what Trump, I feel, does, right? And I think it's his style and whatever it is, it's been conflated with this idea that he is like a total buffoon. And I don't think that that's the case. I think that he does have a view of how to leverage these things to get certain deals done. Now, I agree with you, the intentions of that and the superficial nature of what success means, all of that stuff, I agree with you. I'm just saying that these two things are very real angles that I could kind of understand in terms of like a rational response to what they want to do. And one has a support for Ukraine in some ways because they're trying to hold this peace at bay and they don't want people rolling into Kyiv. But the other one is more just actually no, that there's no deal to be had here, right? Like there's actually, I don't believe that this deal is worth taking. I don't believe that there are minerals worth extracting. And this is not where I want to pivot away from Europe to China as fast as humanly possible. And this is kind of a way to achieve that, to kind of get it off the list.
I mean, but with that line, you can say, I mean, and we can get to the broader conversation about like maybe just like, and this goes to sort of maybe what I said earlier about like what's the starting point. Like, so I think for Trump, the starting point is literally I owe you nothing. And maybe that is part of that. So it's like, well, I don't want to get involved in this. This is Europe's problem. They should be figuring this shit out. I'm like, I don't want to like, hey, I'm happy over here. Like, I don't care what happens over there. And Trump literally not caring about like the fate of Ukraine.
Well, isn't that bit where he bit, right? Where Zelensky was saying, hey, you're not worried now because you've got an ocean between you, but give it some time. Like, it'll be your problem. And you'll be influenced by it. And that's where Trump really bit in, was just say, hey.
Well, he was triggered by that because it was like
triggered.
The notion of him, him being told how he should feel or think, And I want to sort of try and get that, like, because I've listened to like a little bit of the analysis of this, and I think some of it's a bit I'm not say over the top, but it's like I think it's a catastrophe. Well, it is actually catastrophic, but I think it's catastrophic for not the reasons people are saying it is. I think it's catastrophic because it's a signal of just how little Trump cares about anything else apart from his own world. Like it's like the nail in the coffin of the, like if we thought the Transatlantic Alliance was, this partnership between, Europe and America, that was under threat with Trump up until that, then this is the nail in the coffin. But it's not because of the vulgarity of the exchange. It's because of like this just couldn't have happened in a scenario where he cared about it. But I do not at all for a second think the right interpretation here is to ascribe some kind of like genius negotiating out of the deal sort of style thing. And like Trump's whole line has been like, well, like in the conference was like to the effect of, well, to make a deal with Putin, I have to kind of, I have to be nice to him. Like he has, like I can't be mean to him and then negotiate with him. I have to be nice with, we had like, and I think that's kind of not the right way to look at it because I don't think this is a.
He's not wrong.
No, he is wrong because this is not going to be one because Putin. Like a good negotiation is not going to be settled on the basis of Putin thinking Trump's a nice guy. It's going to be settled on like geopolitics. It's going to be settled on the fact that Putin genuinely believes that that Ukraine will be protected by America, and that strengthens the bargaining and the negotiation power, or either that or they settle for like the weakest piss, like. Send Ukraine down the river sort of thing. So
I'm not sure, right? And you can have a different view from that and not believe Trump is a genius. So let's just put that to the side for a moment, okay? I'm not trying to see a mirage of competence or anything like that. But I do think that these are angles, and we've talked about there's a whole team behind this trying to kind of work the angles. I sent you a message the other day where I said that Trump is such a wild card that the establishment don't know what to do with him. And it's kind of like a boxer competing against an opponent who's a southpaw. They're just not used to it, and everything's awkward and weird, and the system's not made to deal with people like him, right? And maybe for good reason, but it is what it is, right? So there's a wild card component in all of this, right, that everyone's reacting to. And I think we'll see how it shakes out. But at the end of the day, right, like you spoke about, how would you want Australia's government to interact with Trump, right? And what you wouldn't advise them to do is to aggravate the man, get in the crosshairs, and dig your heels in for certain things, and not play him, right? Now, what my reflection is that Zelensky is unable to do that right now. He clearly, I listened to a podcast with him, actually with Lex Friedman. He is a man who is, I believe, truly traumatized by the war, and so he should be. He's carrying the baggage of all the betrayals from not just the United States, but also many of the European partners. And the story in Ukraine and the legacy is the epitome of making the same mistake over and over again and being betrayed. I think he carries those scars, and he's unable to kiss the ring and do what he needs to do. I think that at the end of the day here, Trump has frozen now military aid to Ukraine. There's no way that you can, like I said, the consequences of this meeting are very, very vast.
So I think it's a completely different question. Did Zelensky play this game in this meeting the optimal way for him and the people of Ukraine, right?
It's a relevant question.
No, but it's a completely different question to Trump is going, like, the context of this was Trump believes he's the man that's going to negotiate a peace with Russia and broker a peace between Ukraine and Russia, right? And remember, let's just remember that Trump's not a mediator in this situation. He's actually like, the only reason he's in the room is because he's on Ukraine's side. America's on Ukraine's side. It's the only reason he gets a ticket to the equation. He's not there as a mediator. He's there as a partner of Ukraine, right? And so you have a situation where, for political expediency, he's basically saying, I don't care about Ukraine anymore. I just want to settle this thing. So the way I'm going to do it is by cutting you loose. And then, to your comments earlier around, well, I'm going to sell the story about how it's actually Ukraine that didn't want peace. Now, of course, that, then to the comments you just made around Zelensky, did he play his cards right? Well, I don't think he has anything to apologize for, as Fox News was trying to intimate, but and Lindsey Graham were trying to suggest. But I don't know that, I don't think you could stand up and argue that he got a good outcome out of that meeting, right? So,
well, that's what I'm saying, right? The stakes are high, but he's the leader, right? They're counting on an outcome from him, right?
I think it's plain that he doesn't want not just a deal. He just doesn't want any skin in the game on this anymore. So, but that's kind of what, maybe we're on the same page there, because in my view, the reason this whole exchange was concerning, like I said before, wasn't because it was improper for two heads of states to be talking in that way together. That's not why it was so offensive. The reason it was offensive because it was basically such a bold signal of, we don't give a fuck about you, and then you go through the second, third, fourth order consequences of that, and you ask the question, well, what about Europe? What about countries neighboring Ukraine? What about we probably can say at least this much: Trump probably only cares about anything for the period that he's going to be alive. He probably doesn't give a fuck about what happens. I mean, how old's Trump? He's 80, more than 80. How old is he? Oh. He's early 80s, right? He probably doesn't care. Well, he probably knows he's going to be dead within 20 years, right? Definitely. So he doesn't really care what happens beyond 20 years. Meanwhile, you've got folk like Xi Jinping and Putin. They think in centuries, these people. So one of the other things I want to talk about with the press conference is just the changing nature of the media, because in that room you had so many sycophants, like from the media, and of course because Trump's like gotten rid of out of the press pack, like all the like Associated Press, for example, aren't permitted in the room yet. Apparently one of the Russian news sources or like state propaganda arms was in the room though, apparently. I think there's two howlers of two questions, like two howlers that I think I just want to throw out on the table. The first was a question to Trump where he was asked, I'm not quoting here, I'm just sort of riffing, but it was something to the effect of, President Trump, how did you summon the courage to reconnect with Putin to broker this historic peace? How did you do it? How did you? And then Trump goes, that's a good question. Thank you for that question. So that's the first one. And the second one was, and this one probably got a little bit more media attention, was the question of Zelensky asking him in probably the most rude, like I can't, like I would. It's pretty mind blowing that there can be someone that was more rude than JD Vance and Trump in that room, whenever it happened the other day. But the journalist asked Zelensky, "Why didn't you turn up in a suit? This is the
disrespect angle."
I was just like, and he's just like, "What the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? My country's in war, and maybe when my country's out of war, I'll turn up in a suit. It might even be more expensive than yours. Maybe it'll be cheaper than yours, but." Anyway,
I thought he handled that well.
I mean, what a come on! That is like, that's such a like, yeah. I don't know.
Obviously, like he was a statement not turning up in the suit. So
but he hasn't worn. He literally hasn't worn a suit. I wouldn't want to. I might. That could be subject to a fact check, but like, I'm pretty sure like for all of his engagements, he has not worn a suit. Like this isn't a special deliberate thing. This is just he doesn't wear suits. It is a
deliberate thing, right? It's to show the world he's at war, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's fine, but he's doing that to elicit.
Yeah, but not just.
That's what I mean. A lot of this stuff is theater, right? And I do agree that was a terrible. When I first heard that, I actually thought it was banter between Vance and Zelensky, like some just ribbing, and then I'm like, oh no, this is from the press. This is not good. Look. Trump admitted at the end of it, he said that, hey, look, I've kept this going for so long in front of the media because I want to show, like, I want people to see what it's like. I want to see people what we're working with here, right? Like, open the curtain to see how the sausage is made. And so, look, that definitely, and that's why I think it's probably more purposeful than you think around trying to create these views or these narratives. Let's go a little bit prediction-wise. Like, how happy do you think Russia is right now? Like, what's the mood at the Kremlin right now?
Well, I think there's probably, and there's one angle that you didn't raise, but this is probably the only way that I could accept that there's any grand strategy in this, but I think it's a long shot. I think it's like Occam's razor, comes into play, and it most likely isn't this. But if this is a ploy just to reel Russia in, and there's some sort of like, I don't necessarily think if this was the strategy, I don't think Zelensky would be in on it. So I think that was genuinely a bad performance, but a bad experience for him. But if there, for example, is like, we're going to make Putin and Russia think like they're in the driver's seat, but then we're going to like surprise them with some erratic kind of generous counter, and it's like this whole thing, like we're going to sucker you in and then we're going to turn the tables on you, pull the rug out from underneath you again, sort of thing. If that's part of the strategy, I think possibly you could turn around and say, okay, but I think now you've got to question the credibility of the Trump administration. Like, can you really believe anything they say now?
But that's what I mean. That's why I actually don't think anyone like this is. Trump is for himself, right? Like, he's such a character in that way that I don't think, like, all this narrative about him, loving or admiring these strongmen, I think that's manufactured as well. Like, I actually don't think that is, like, I think that we're eating up what he's serving, because people believe it. And
I
don't believe it's as strong as what everyone thinks. It's too obvious. Trump makes an effort, goes out of his way to surprise people. He hates being predictable. And like, I just don't think it's a thing, right? Like, to your point, I don't think he cares about Putin. He doesn't care about what this person thinks of him. And I think that is a manufactured narrative that suits him.
I think the problem is that he might not care about Putin. He might not care about any of these things, but like he like, even though we like to think of the president, US president, as the all powerful, but like the system should care. Like there should be people and in the system, there should be people in the White House, there should be Congress, there should be even Republicans coming out and calling it out. And none of them are doing that. And
Well,
it's
no,
because
to
we
be
have a
fair,
cult of personality, right?
there are many GOP kind of hawks on this that are outraged about the
Yeah, but they're not
the
saying
funding.
anything. They're not
They are
vocal.
at the moment.
Well, I don't think they are really. I mean, I'm not saying there's no one coming out, but like no one of influence, no one of power. Like it's not like Marco Rubio has resigned.
Well, like Lindsey
Well,
Graham,
okay.
Mitch
You know what?
McConnell.
If Marco Rubio actually believed in the stuff that he was saying, maybe 5 years ago, he would resign today. After today, he would say, "Look, it's clear that
better
we're not
one
the same
hand on the
page."
wheel, or maybe a pinky foot.
I just think at the end of the day, there's and I know. And by the way, I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying they should, and the fact that they're not is like an indictment on them. They're cornered. They're snookered, right? Because this MAGA movement's a cancer that's taken over the Republican Party and American politics. So, yeah.
Look, I think we'll see. I do think some of this posturing and so on is a play to throw things off center, and we'll see where it lands. I guess the overwhelming thing that I get to sometimes with all of this is that you have to be honest that there were no incentives for either side to do anything other rationally than just keep on fighting before, right? And when there's so much like fog of war and complexity, the only thing that you can kind of cling to is like a pause in the bullets firing so that people are not killing each other when you're at a stalemate, right? So I'm kind of, if there's one silver lining for me in all of this complexity, some of it's that actually some people stop killing each other when there's a stalemate is something you can hold on to.
Yeah, but we don't have a ceasefire, do we? I mean,
not yet. Not yet.
But like, I mean, the other thing is, there's no point in having a ceasefire if war's going to break out in 2 years, 3 years, and it's going to be even like and this is the whole Zelensky point, right? Which is that what's the point of a ceasefire if you're just basically handing over the keys to the country for them to take at any point in the future when they want to? So I guess the last points I want to sort of leave with is, you can talk about all sorts of stuff around, this exchange. I truly just believe that Trump just doesn't want to, just doesn't want any more commitment. Like he just doesn't care. Like he couldn't care less. You can talk about the positive externality or byproduct of, Europe being more self-reliant in terms of its defense and all. You can talk about all that sort of stuff, but the one thing you should not do, and I think maybe the one thing that we haven't talked about today, is just how precious stability is and reaching like an equilibrium is. And, the equilibrium isn't perfect, but when you're talking about nuclear powers, when you're talking about conflicts where, one of the belligerents has actually threatened to use nuclear weapons, you actually don't want to, stability is your friend. And I think what we've seen here has actually compromised stability. The totality of everything that's happened in the last 35 days, is it? It's just compromised stability. And that's put everyone at risk. That's put the whole planet at risk. That's put us at risk here in Australia.
Well, if the same meeting played out, but with Putin and not Zelensky, I think everyone would agree with that. The issue now is that is a leverage angle, and let's see what happens.
That's the thing. There is no leverage. He's given it all away.
No, well, mate, look what Zelensky walked away with. Do you think he has more leverage now?
No, but the point is just they're supposed to get leverage over Putin, except Trump's just given it all away.
But this is not a 2D. There's not just two parties in this deal.
This isn't Trump versus Zelensky. although that is the name of this episode. It's actually should be Trump versus Putin. It should be actually Trump plus Zelensky versus Putin. But instead it's Putin plus Trump versus Zelensky, and that's not the way it should be.
Well, some would argue it's Europe, right? It's not like a purely Ukraine-Russia thing, right? It's Europe.
Well, of course it's not. But in this context, you have Ukraine's partner basically squeezing their balls in the interests of Russia. So anyway, I think this is bad.
We did love J.D. Vance.
Can I just say, J.D. Vance, he's a really disrespectful cunt, isn't he?
Yeah, okay. There's something about him that I just know deep down in my heart that 10 years from now, he's going to be a gay icon. He's got the bear market trap down. Look, this is sometimes, I think, a symptom of when you're just a bit too smart for your own good and you're just a little bit too slick. Sometimes you can come across this way, or you think you can get away with some of this stuff.
I think his age and inexperience doesn't help him because he comes across as the graduate know-it-all who...
Correct. He's the big brain analyst. He's the upstart grad. I mean, look at the whole his talk to in Germany. Like the dude's out on a mission. He's got the tools. He's to be deadly in this kind of arena, and I don't think it's going to be something that slows down for him personally and his brand. And yeah, I think that Trump's aligned with that.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for playing devil's advocate again. Very much appreciated.